with those of you at home. So you'll be able to follow along on the settlement statement. And if you remember, 2 Tuesdays ago, Scott came and talked about title insurance. Did anybody have any questions after that class that bubbled up since that class about title insurance? Did you go through the title insurance examples he shared with us, and did you look them over again? I cannot stress enough, don't be like too many agents and skip that part, saying, I don't really understand it, I'm not gonna look at it, somebody else knows what they're doing, I don't need to. I can't stress it enough that you all are project managers. And some of you have already been experiencing this during a transaction. There are times in which you're actually the only one truly touching the transaction throughout from start to finish. So what's important is you have to touch base with everybody. And sometimes, as weird as it's going to feel the first couple of times, that means even like the buyer's lender or the buyer's title company, and you're the listing agent, you're gonna be like, oh, am I stepping on toes or what have you? You might need to do that to make certain that everything is on track. Because here's the thing, if you don't, and somebody drops a ball and you don't learn about it until it's too late, then it can cause havoc on what's you're closing. You're going to think, and here's where I was naive, Scott. I was naive when I was brand new, and I thought every title company knows what they're doing and they're never going to drop the ball because they know so much more than I do.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way about lenders. I felt like, I don't know anything. I know this much. They know this much. How am I going to know if they're doing it right? So I learned that what I had to ask, I didn't have to be an expert on your process. I didn't have to be an expert on a lender's process, but I could call and say, hey, Scott, I'm calling about 123 Main Street. Does everything look good? Do you have everything you need? Are we on track to close on June 15th? That's all I need to ask. And then he can say to me, oh, yeah, we've got everything, or oh, still missing some stuff, or we're working through an issue, but it looks like we're going to get through it. The minute you assume that every other party, hi Tamisha, has everything under control is when you're going to be in trouble. So don't make those assumptions. And that's why we're showing you all what a title commitment looks like. And today, what a settlement statement looks like, so that you can get familiar with these documents, because you have to. That's just like, some of you are going to be so excited when you close 4 deals, and then while you're in the launch program, remember, after you close 4, then you can get free transaction coordination services with Rosa and her team. And some of you are going to be so excited because you're going to be like, I don't want to do any more paperwork. But remember, that does not absolve you from having to know the contracts. Does that make sense? You got to know what's in them. You got to know what can happen. And the same with the title commitment and the settlement statement. You've got to have awareness and knowledge about them. You just don't have, we don't have to be the experts, because we rely on the experts.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, even if you hire a transaction coordinator, do not allow your files to just say, oh, well, Tracy's handling that, and just move on to the next thing. Be aware of what's going on in your business, because it's your business, guys, and everything reflects back to you, and we realize that. And that's why we try to make sure everything we do reflects positively on you guys. And make sure things happen, and also understand everything other than issues that would pop up in a title search of the property itself, or that would pop up in a court record search for your sellers, can be corrected mostly, but most of it comes from you guys.
Yeah.
Because all of the information we have as far as purchase price, as far as where your buyer's getting their loan, all those things, we rely on you or the selling agent, if you're not the selling agent, for that information. And again, as I said last time, if you look at that title commitment we send out and something's wrong, just let us know. You know, one thing I will say, this came up yesterday, as a matter of fact, with the closer. We closed 54 transactions, last Monday. Okay, and you know, end of the month, everybody wants to close, you know, stuff like that. So if you email your closer, give her a little bit of time to look at, see, answer your question before you pick up the phone and call and say, did you get my email? Cause I'll be honest, they are swamped right now.
They're in back-to-back appointments.
Yeah, and I also would say, please stress to your clients to be on time. Because sometimes we only have one conference room, you know, or something like that, and if someone shows up 30 minutes late. And we've got back-to-back closing schedules, it just really bogs the whole thing down really quickly. You know, and some people, you know, just don't understand the value of other people's time, let's put it that way, and what it can cause as far as being late, whatever. The other thing too is for the buyers, make sure they understand they have to come with certified funds. Can't show up with a check. Can't show up with a
Personal check.
briefcase full of cash. We don't do cash. You know, but they can wire, you know, but also please caution them, they received wire instructions to call and verify the instructions they received, because that is the biggest problem that pops up, is that, you know, somebody has a Gmail, Yahoo, whatever account, and somebody's intercepted that email and changed the instructions. That's where the biggest wire fraud comes in. So always tell them, do not send money until you call your closer and verify that, you know, those instructions are valid.
The wire fraud is real.
Yeah.
It's not just other places, it's here.
Yeah, by the way, on the 30th of this month, we're going to be teaching a fraud class that is 3 hours of continuing education.
Oh, cool.
For Kansas and Missouri. We'll be at the board office down on, state line.
Okay. Okay.
And it will be for the first 100 people that sign up. The classroom only holds 100 people.
Yeah.
So I, you know, and I right now have an email that's going out this, supposed to have already gone out, this thing go out this week, to approximately 750 clients who've had multiple transactions with us in the last, year. So it doesn't mean y'all aren't invited. I'm gonna send
Send me one.
everybody, you know, an email, all the leaders, all the team leads and everybody an email saying, hey, if there's agents who wanna come, get
Get
on the
them
register. There's an Eventbrite thing to register. If you want credit for both Kansas and Missouri, or either or, there is an additional information when you register.
Your
Just
license
your
number.
license number, because our instructor has to send in to the state your license information.
Yep.
And I'll need to be able to download that and give it to him to do that, but it will be free of charge. It'll be 3 hours of CE
Awesome.
credit. It is elective credit, I believe, but.
Yeah,
on-
it's elective, but that's what most of our hours are.
Yeah, so anyway, and like I said, we'll be at the board. If we get an overwhelming response,
Maybe
you
do
know,
it
more
again.
than 100 people, we'll do another class. I can only do 100 at a time, because that's the largest classroom I can come up with that would let us really give you the right environment, so. And maybe, you know, if just KWKC Metro needs 100 people, we could probably do it here. You know, something like that, because
That's awesome.
our underwriter willing to do that, so. Anyway, yeah, biggest thing from last time that I would tell you is, please don't ignore the email when you get a copy of the commitment. If you're on the selling side and it's the listing agent that's providing the title insurance to your customer, and you haven't gotten a title commitment from them, find out who that is, make sure you know, you should know, because you sent the earnest money to that title company, and say, hey, where's my title commitment? You know, if it's been more than, you know, 4 days, find out where it's at. You need to look that over and see if there's issues that you need to sit down with your client and discuss. Like I said, on the buy side, you want to discuss things like covenants and restrictions. You want to discuss things like easements, you know, and things like that, in case your client's wanting to make changes or do something different to the property. And then you just wanna look it over and make sure you got the right lender information, all those things are all correct, cause like I said, everything's easily correctable. But I just hate when it happens on the day of closing,
Right.
you know?
Well, it can, I mean, I hope you never have the experience, but you probably will, that a closing takes much longer than an hour. And that's because something's been missed or not. When Scott said, because I want to emphasize this, when Scott said that they depend on you for information, like, here's the thing, they also depend on the lender for information. They don't just come up with these numbers out of it, like, they're like, oh, this looks good, we'll put these numbers. They're depending on others, they calculate some of the numbers, but they are depending on the lender and you. So if during the negotiations of this transaction, after you've submitted that initial contract, anything changes the money of the deal, meaning the price or closing costs or anything, they have to have that amendment to know that that happened. Although they're very talented, they're not mind readers. And what I've seen that happens are the agents, and don't assume the other agent did it. Remember, you're the project manager. You have to feel like you take responsibility for everything, even what doesn't feel like yours. You have to own it. And you have to make certain those have all been submitted to the title company and the lender. If any of the money changes in a transaction, those parties have to know, or you're gonna get to closing and somebody's gonna say, no, that's not the sales price. And that happens more than they would like, and that means, oh my God, the agents didn't look at the settlement statement before closing. And when do we usually get, or a settlement statement is issued? What?
Well, preferably, we like to send it out at least 48 hours before closing, okay? But we're dependent on the, as Kristen said, on the lender. Because the lender has to balance with us before we can actually prepare the Alta and get everything ready for closing. And sometimes, you know, I mean, we were supposed to have an 8 o'clock closing this morning, then I'm now going to one place at 10:30 and another place at 11:30 to close the buyers, because they're gonna be in two different locations because the lender docs weren't ready, and we couldn't send out an Alta until it actually just came, as I said, I had to come in here. So, you know, so now everybody's looking at it last minute before a closing is gonna happen in that, so. You know, so we're dependent, as she said, on other people too,
Yes.
and we'd like to send them out if we can, hopefully at least 48 hours ahead of time. But I'm not gonna promise you in today's market right now, I mean, like I said, we're closing an average of 30-some closings a day. And between our 6 locations you know, so it's sometimes last minute coming out, you know, and like she said, some things change, you know, yesterday, I did a closing in Lawrence. And we had to wind up redoing the Alta and the settlement statement because the buyer went to get their money and their bank was closed. And, because they were updating their software on their computer system.
Oh, geez,
So,
not good
I'll be
timing.
honest with you, hopefully the check's coming today, because we all went ahead and signed seller and buyer. But I had to go to a UPS store in Lawrence to reprint the settlement statements and the Alta. Because we had to redo them to reprorate for today instead of yesterday. You know, and then the lender on top of it, they time stamp and date their documents, and so they wouldn't allow us to use, even though all the documents weren't being changed. We had to reprint the whole packet, and most buyer packets are 100 and some pages, guys. You know, luckily the lender was Bank Midwest, they had an office there, so I went from the UPS store to Bank Midwest and picked up a pack, they printed the packet for me. I mean, but that's the kind of stuff we did to just get the thing closed, and it's all last minute because buyer couldn't get the funds.
Wow. Well, and who would have thought, oh, tell your buyer to check and make sure that their bank's gonna be open on closing day.
If they're waiting for closing day, they can go get their check as soon as they know, as soon as they agree that, yeah, the settlement statement comes out and is.
But sometimes, that's the thing, sometimes your buyer is waiting to hear how much do I need to bring?
So as soon as you get it, if you're on the buy side and you've looked it over to make sure nothing needs to be corrected, you know, reach out to your buyer and say, hey, do you have your funds? Are you wiring them? And they say, yeah, we're wiring them. Well, did you get the wiring instructions? And have you called Kristen or Alex or Hannah or whoever, or Amy,
Confirm.
you know, to confirm those instructions? Please do not send your money unless you've done it. You know,
I've heard people send like 70,000 wire, $70,000. And it was spam. It was wire fraud and they lost all that money. I mean, I just can't imagine. But I think you all are so aware that fraud is so sophisticated in this day and age that we can't stress it enough with our clients. There's a lot of our clients, you know, they're not savvy about wires. They're not. And they are very trusting of institutions. So when they get an official looking email, they're gonna think that's the real deal. It can happen to any of us, really. I have to look twice and think, is this real? And then I click on who the email that was actually sent from to see if it's some crazy.
well, depending on the
Domain.
age of your client too. I mean,
Yeah.
if they're very young, it might be their first home they're ever purchasing. They've never gone through this process before. If they're someone like my parents or my in-laws, you know, they may have only owned one home in their lifetime, and at that time, they went into the bank and sat down and, you know, did everything right then and there at the bank. They didn't do anything anywhere else or go to a mortgage company or whatever.
The contract was like 1 or 2 pages.
Yeah, you know, so, I mean, it could be very few transactions that they've ever experienced, or it could be someone like us who don't do it every day, all the time, you know.
I had a client who used a very small credit union in KCK, a local one, run by through the Catholic Church there. They didn't do wire transfers.
No,
They,
Well,
it
and
just
some-
says the policy says we had to go get a physical cashier.
and to that end, to also,
She just-
some credit unions bank through banks.
Mm.
And so when funds need to be wired into a seller, sometimes the routing numbers and account numbers aren't the same that's on their check. So they need to make sure they understand that too. So, you know, so they're kind of gonna receive money coming in.
It's complicated.
Yeah, it can be, but it, like I said, it's fun. It can be very smooth and easy, you know, it doesn't have to be a stressful situation at all. You know, and a lot of lenders too have gone to, you know, where they e-sign a lot of the docs, which helps, because then, you know, the packet's not quite so big.
Mhm.
You know, yesterday, the buyer packet was only 44 pages, but
Wow.
they had e-signed,
Only,
e-signed most of their documents.
only.
Well, anyway,
So I have up behind you just the first
cool.
part of the settlements that, yeah, I got you all
Queued up here.
guys, settlement statement, again, everything that we have and do comes from other sources, mainly you, as far as the contract and what the information is that's on here. Or from the lender, what fees they're charging your client if it's on the buy side. You will rarely see a settlement statement that looks like this, probably almost never. Because we used to, back in the day when I was a loan officer, we actually used to sit down with the buyer and the seller and close them together. Okay, well.
That's been a long
I
time
can-
ago.
I can
I'm gonna tell you.
Very long time. I also tell you, not always a very good thing, because when the buyer sees how much money the seller is netting, they get a little upset and things like that, so.
It is not.
That's their thing, so I mean, it could happen, you know, especially if it was a cash transaction or something like that, you know. But, well, we only do this because we want you guys to see the effects on certain things on my.
On both sides.
On the other party, okay? And not always does it have an effect. As an example, all the buyer's fees that you'll see on here from the lender don't have any effect on the sell side. Okay, but most of the time, if there's a debit on one side, there's a credit on the other. You know, like this here, I can pull down a little bit on that. As you guys can see, there's a debit over here from the borrower for the purchase price. And then there's a credit to the seller for the same amount. Okay. It does
So
all-
what you're saying, what you're saying is if they were representing the buyer, they most likely would just see these numbers.
Correct. You're gonna see one that just has the buyer's cost.
So when
And they'll
I
all
was-
be on the same side, by the way, guys. If you represent the seller is gonna be over here too. Okay.
This is just to
Unless they
give
do a
you,
dual split one like this, but yeah. And then the other thing is, as an example too, is if there's payoffs over here as a debit from the seller, You don't know, your buyer's not gonna see those, because they don't even see what the seller has as far as loans or liens or anything like that.
And taxes and stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but it does all have to balance out. So when you get to the final page, and I'm gonna go over the numbers, not finally, it's on the signature page, but when you get to this page, it all has to balance out for the seller and for the buyer. Now, I'm saying the same numbers on both sides, because it doesn't,
No,
you
but
know, because the debits and credits are gonna be different, but these numbers all have to balance. Okay? So there's all that, I mean, that's what an escrow service does. We only hold the funds in escrow. They have to be in a certified account. We have to post a bond that shows we have the ability to do this and file it with the states, but we have to be able to prove to an auditor where every dollar went. Right down to the pennies. I mean, you'll see 33 cents, we don't round up, round off, anything like that. And I will tell you too, also, if there's homes association dues, we always put the annual amounts on here, and most of the time I'm sitting down at a closing and I'm asking the seller, hey, how much is your homes association dues and when are they paid through? And they're going, I don't know, do you remember how much they were? No, they changed them, I know that, the pool money went up, whatever. We always do it, not all title companies do that.
that's
And
nice.
matter of fact, most of the others don't, frustrates the heck out of me on a split closing.
Yeah.
Cause I'm going through another title company's settlement statement and trying to explain it to someone or trying to find whether, because on one of them, there's a certification form that they have to say all their dues are paid and when they're paid through.
Ooh,
It just drives me crazy.
That-
But we, as a service, we always do this.
but can we just talk about split closings for a minute?
Sure.
And when you usually wouldn't do a split closing? Because I don't know if they understand that. When you are making out the earnest money check or wire, it's gonna go to the seller's title company, because they're gonna hold it most likely, or there are very few brokerages that actually have their own escrow accounts, okay, and they might hold it. So that doesn't mean your buyer has to close at the seller's title company unless it's.
Only time they don't ever have to close with the other seller, title company, or vice versa, okay? We recommend if it's a cash transaction, that you have your buyers close with the seller's title, even if that's not us. And the reason being, because there's no savings to your client. We're not issuing a title policy, so that, you know, if we were closing the buyer on this particular case and they're getting a loan, okay, to give to their lender, then we're issuing a policy to that lender, so, you know, we make money, you know, and it would be able to provide maybe a cheaper rate to your client. I don't know for sure, but I do know our fees are usually less than others. But we could also probably provide you much better service. And that's what we like to take pride on. But, if we're not issuing that on a cash transaction, there's just the owner's policy coming from the seller's title company. We recommend you just close there because there's usually no savings. The savings, if you close both with the listing agent's title company, usually comes in the amount of how much they charge to do the closing. So if we're charging a fee to do the closing right here, we give a discount if we're doing both sides. We give both parties a discount. Than if we're just doing one side. But, so that's a savings that comes to client that way, but our fees are low enough that usually that negates any discount that they might get from closing, say with Continental or Security First or something like that. Versus having the buyer go to us.
And here's what I will tell you that Scott will be probably too judicious about is not all title companies are equal. They are not. And I had to experience it firsthand to understand that. I thought again, as a new person, I thought, Ellie, every title company knows what they're doing. Every title company is going to get it done and it's going to be fine. That's not true. There can be huge differences in the experience. And that's why I'm going to tell you that once I found my good title company, one that gives good service and that took good care of myself and my clients and my transaction, then that's who I would recommend to my clients. Now, our clients have a choice, but there are very few clients that are going to say, oh, I have a favorite title company. Unless they're like an investor. So an investor might have enough sales and transactions that they want a certain title company. However, it is important, that's why I want you to understand that you can do split closings. And that there is a difference, so I wouldn't just automatically go with the seller's title company. If you're not sure because you're new, ask other agents their experiences. Because there are radically different experiences, that's what I will tell you.
And I'll also tell you this, it has to do a lot with the underwriters. Again, if y'all remember a couple of weeks ago, I told you, we underwrite for several different companies. Some title companies don't have that flexibility. Stewart underwrites for Stewart. First American underwrites for First American. Chicago underwrites for Chicago. They don't have the opportunity where we can look at, hey, this might be a better fit for Old Republic, or this might be a better fit for Westcor, one of our other underwriters to do a transaction with. I mean, yes, sir.
And so, in reading that statement.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me the closing fee, for the
This one?
borrower is $275 and the closing fee for
Right.
the seller is $2.
I'm sorry, the seller's $250?
Mhm.
Yeah, because we did both sides of it. We gave a discount, so we closed the seller at $250 and we charged buyer's closing fee of $275. That's just our fees.
They have rate
We
cards.
have a rate card, no, and fees that are built into our app if you use our app. That will populate every time you do a transaction.
So if you think about it, there's usually more paperwork for a buyer than there is a
I
seller.
mean, most of my competitors, these are like $350 or higher. This is.
Yeah.
Same for that.
Yeah, it's because, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's because a seller's closing is much quicker, less
Yeah.
paperwork,
Yeah.
less time spent,
There's
whereas
usually-
the buyer is the big
Less
heavy
than
one.
20 pages on a seller side on closing documents, and most buyers are 160. And unless they're e-signing, and then they.
That's a good
they get
question.
Less, but that's the biggest part of the closing fee. I mean, guys, like I said, you don't want to pay our copy bill nor our paper purchase. I mean, the guy shows up literally with, these forklifts to deliver copy paper to our office.
I bet.
And we burn through the stuff like it ain't no tomorrow. Toner, I'm not kidding you.
Oh, no. Well, we feel your pain. We're about half of what you do,
Yeah.
but we feel the pain.
So yeah, south side, we're a little cheaper because there's just not enough paper, as much paper, And plus, we're issuing that owner's policy, and so we're getting our share of that premium there as well.
So you wanna go through this and let's
Yeah.
kind of talk them through what these
Yeah,
lines
sure.
are.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, like Kristen said earlier, when these come out to you, the first thing, whether you're on this side or this side, is the sales price. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do we have the latest amendment? Did something change? Same thing about loan amount. Is the borrower still borrowing $125,000 in this case? Or did they change loan companies, because we need to know that. We're gonna issue an owner's policy or a lender's policy to their lender. And on your title commitment is gonna remember, it's Gringotts First National Bank. We need to, are they still getting a loan? Your seller's payoffs. I actually had an agent that said to me, we were missing a payoff.
Hmm.
We're like, what are you talking about? So the seller's got a second mortgage. We're like, seller doesn't have a second mortgage. We looked everywhere. We went back, researched the title. Seller did not have a second mortgage. Seller says, I got a second mortgage. Went back to the holder of that second mortgage, which was a local, small community bank. They had a note with them and they had a second mortgage, but the bank never recorded it.
Wow.
You
can't find what you can't find.
To the agent.
Yeah.
Cause we wound up having to get it corrected and get a payoff, but there was no second mortgage ever recorded.
So, if you look at my listing information, email, it has a list of important questions. And one of them is, do you have a second lien on this home or a home equity loan? So if you are, as an agent who's going to be listing a home, are not asking questions, like, do you have any tax liens? Federal or state or anything? Do you have a second mortgage or lien on the property? Do you have any mechanics liens? Do you have any back child support or marital support? So you've got to be, have you filed for bankruptcy? So there's a list of hard questions that probably won't feel super comfortable to you in the beginning to be asking of someone, but you have to get in their business. Because if you don't know these things, then you don't even know if they can sell this house. You really don't. You're just going on what they said. And you'll find out information like this that was critical to the closing of this house.
Well,
That there was no record, and the title company can only find what they can find.
Scroll back up first, let's go back up here. Is this information correct?
Yes.
We skipped over that. Is Peppermint Patty our buyer, or is she going by Pat? Or whatever, Sally, she goes by a totally different name. Is Charlie and Lucy our sellers? Again, maybe
Is it
it's,
lane or road?
yeah, do we have the right property address? Again, that you should have looked at when you got that commitment early on, but did we have something wrong here? Make sure that's all correct. Again, is she doing Greenwich First National Bank, or did she go to Rocket Mortgage?
Please.
Okay, whatever,
Again, the title company only knows what they know.
and is this right? Is the closing date changing?
Mhm.
Changed yesterday, right there on the spot, went from yesterday to today.
And all those are very important, because this stuff gets recorded again in all public realms where things live.
Yeah,
So if it's incorrect, then it gets out into the public as incorrect, so it's a big problem for your client.
and this one here in Kansas, by the way, on the sell side, is the biggest confusing thing ever to
Yes.
Kansas people
Yes.
selling homes.
How they pay tax.
Especially this time of year, because they think they paid their taxes and they haven't, when they pay in May, it's for the first half, the last half, they're always in arrears.
They're
And when
pay-
they pay in December, they're paying the rest of it, and it's like, it just confuses them.
Well,
They paid them and they have,
They think they're current in their taxes because they pay taxes.
right.
They don't understand they pay behind.
Another question that comes up a lot on the sell side. I'm gonna get a refund of my escrow account from my lender, right? My agent told me I would. Please don't ever tell them that,
Maybe.
okay? Tell them, check with your lender. Because some lenders reduce their payoff by the balance of their escrow account. And so if your client's expecting a $2,000, $3,000 refund, and they've instead already gotten it here because they reduced their payoff,
That's good to know.
please make sure they understand that. Also, at closing last week, that my payoff's not that much.
Mm,
I go, well, you have to understand, ma'am, we're closing today. The buyer's not closing until next week. We have to do a daily proration of your interest to a time when your buyer closes their lender funds, and we then can overnight a check or wire a check to that lender for the payoff. And so there has to be some added amounts to that.
Well, and you know what they do? They also look at their monthly mortgage statement and it has your estimated payoff.
Right.
And that's not 100% accurate when you go to
Because they have
sell.
daily interest. Interest is charged every single day. I had an agent the other day tell a client, because I always explain to people, because some lenders put an amortization schedule in there. And I always tell new buyers, especially new ones, I say, this is accurate if you make your payment so that the lender posts it on the 1st of every month. If you make your payment so it comes in on the 12th of every month, this will not be accurate, because you will pay an extra 12 days of interest that is not accounted for in here. Yes, it's not late until the 15th.
mhm.
So they don't charge you a late fee, but you will be accumulating 12 more days of interest if you always make your payment to show up on the 12th. And the agent had already told them, no, it doesn't matter as long as you make it between the 1st and the 15th, that's how it rolls. It's not true.
Stay in your lane.
So it's they pay interest every day. So until we get that check to the lender, that's what we have to calculate, when we believe we're gonna get that check to them for that payoff. So anyway, taxes, like I said, just make sure if you're on the sell side, the seller understands taxes are always paid in arrears. And that, yes, your lender might be paying them for you, but we have to guarantee in the policy that they're paid, so we're gonna take it out and pay it. And then if your lender has already paid it, because sometimes that happens too. It's the time of year where the lender has sent out the check and already paid the taxes. Well, you'll get a refund from the county if we overpay them. Okay? So that's what will happen. These are the proration and adjustments that are gonna be over here. They also owe taxes from the first of the year until the day of closing. Okay, because we gotta collect from them. They still owe that. Again, on the Missouri side, because Missouri has the little quirky thing they think's really cool, that they only reassess values every odd year. But then when you're in an odd year, that means we've got to collect, because they're not gonna do it till the end of the year. So we have to collect taxes, and everybody's going, oh, I've never, ever, ever paid that much in taxes. There's no way it's that amount of money. I had seller throw his pen down. I'm not signing this. This is ridiculous. And I go, sir, you're basing it on 2024 taxes. We gotta base it on what the 2025 taxes.
Cause we're in 2025.
And what we, and what the buyer's gonna wind up having to pay. And we do that based on the sales price plus the verified mill levies. This time of year, we start getting from all the counties what their certified mill levies and rates are gonna be. And so what we use is a formula on the tax proration agreement. And I always tell everybody, what that agreement says is that if the amount on here for the annual is higher to the buyers, sorry, you don't get any more credit from the seller. But if they're actually lower, you don't owe them a refund either. Okay? But from the seller, same difference. If they're higher than what we estimated them, you don't owe the buyer any more money. But also if they're a little bit lower, then yeah, sorry, but as I reminded that gentleman, he paid from January 1st to January 26th. I mean, it was a matter of, 25 days. Come on.
And see, that goes to a credit to the buyer because they're gonna have to pay that.
Right, because this will have to, the buyer will be charged that. So we give the buyer a credit for that off their total that they have to pay at the closing. And this is where sometimes the debits and credits will come across. Same thing, Homes Association. This seller had already paid them all the way till the end of the year. And so we had to prorate the amount and take it from the buyer and give it to the seller. They've already paid it, they're owed that money back, okay? Seller paid closing costs, again, maybe that changed, maybe something happened. The house that closed yesterday, sewer line was messed up, had to not only dig up their yard, but the neighbor's yard.
Oh, painful.
So this amount had changed over the time when the contract was written,
Remember those amendments?
so.
The money
Now, we
changed.
had already had that, stuff like that, so, but again, there was a charge from the seller. And we gave it as a credit to the buyer to cover, okay? Again, fees that are being charged, the reason they're different is we have different amounts for sellers and buyers. Okay, and again, if we were only on one side of it, there wouldn't be that charge over there. It would be, when they close with their title company, it would be on there. I mean, we have the same settlement statement, guys. We don't redo settlement statements. So if we're doing a split closing and your seller is closing with Alpha Title, we're gonna use Alpha Title settlement statement. Okay, because they're the ones that are gonna disperse out all the money. It's the company, it's the title company that's paying out the money that will have to have the settlement statement. So we use theirs. Excuse me, then, we do have a fee here to, issue the loan policy. There's also usually on the Missouri side, there's what's called a closing protection letter. We have to verify that between the time that they close and the time the monies get in our account, that we have the money to pay out. We won't go bankrupt in between that time, and so we issue a closing protection letter. It's an insurance policy to the buyers.
And how much does that cost?
$25. It's built into our fees, when you see it this way, but we have to by law separate it out, okay? And then the owner's policy, because we are issuing this policy that we're on both sides of this transaction. So we're issuing your buyer their policy.
So when we say that's a title loan policy and that's a title owner's policy.
Correct.
Well, I just, for clarification for
Right,
them to
but there's a
understand what those,
discount,
policies.
there's a discount here because we're on both sides.
Yeah.
And this fee would be higher if we were only on one side.
just know
That's
that,
all on our rate.
that in most transactions, there's two title policies.
Right.
The one for the lender that protects them from any title issues, and then there is one for the owner. Okay,
Okay? And then, most importantly, for you guys,
Is your commission ready?
Compensation. Okay? By the way, our seller net sheets estimate in our app, we've updated it, changed it to compensation, not commissions.
Thank you.
Although I think it's hilarious, you all still send us commission letters, not compensation.
No,
letters.
that's.
So we still list it on our settlement statements as commission, so whatever, anyway. Is it right? Okay,
So did you did you actually review the DA, the commission letter? Because that's what they're gonna get, is that information, and if anything changed on your commission during the transaction, then you need to make that change so that it can officially notify the title company, because again, they don't know.
so we just need to know, need to make sure you're getting paid right, and I will point this out. These amounts are not always the same. Okay, had an agent get furious with us that said, why are these not the same? It's supposed to be the same, yada, yada.
No, it's not.
I'm like,
Negotiable.
we receive your compensation letters to us, and this is what we put on here. We don't create them ourselves and pluck from air the amount.
So remember, commission is compensation is always negotiable. That means you may, in your buyer's agency, have charged 3% compensation. But you don't know what the listing agent, don't assume it's the same as yours. They might have negotiated something different. And it could be more or it could be less. And don't get ticked or mad when you see another agent has made more than you. The only time it will cause you pain is when that agent did nothing and you had to carry the weight of the transaction. It is what it is. That's what they negotiated, and it doesn't always feel fair. However, do not get bent out of shape because that's what they negotiated. You had the opportunity to negotiate yours. So, and don't take it out on the title company because it's not their fault. They're just recording what they received. But sometimes I've seen it too, where agents are like, I can't believe he's making that much more than me.
So anyways, government gets involved when there are fees to record everything at the courthouse. They charge by the page. Some
Oh,
cases.
wait. We have to look at the transaction fee because you all, as agents in the launch program, $4.95 is charged to your client on the transaction, and that goes to the office, not to you, not back to your pocket. Okay?
So we have to know what that fee is. Usually it's on the commission letters we get, you know. So, and honestly, I had to explain to this agent that this plus this equals that.
Yeah.
But the way this commission letter came, it came as that. And theirs came as this and this separate.
Hello.
And the reason we split it out is because they were charging the buyer or their transaction fee, and this was being paid by the seller.
Right.
Okay, which may not be the case today, but anyway, just look it over and try and understand that, you know, they were upset, like I said.
From
I'm like-
curiosity.
I'm like, hold on. If you read it, it actually is the same. It's just not being charged to the same people.
Right.
You know, so-
Right.
and they didn't have both sides, so they didn't have both statements.
Right.
But I explained it. So anyway, government gets involved in Kansas. There was what's called a mortgage registration tax. Okay, and it's charged for the thousands and, you know, so there's, the amount's gonna be a lot higher than it would be over on the Missouri side. Sometimes though, this was a trust, we have to record the trust. And they might be 40 pages and it's $4 or $5 a page and yada, yada. So could be a fee to your seller that may not be there. And then, again, record the warranty deeds. Also, HOAs. They have all lately got their hands out like there ain't no tomorrow. And they're charging not only new fees for your new buyer to come in and be part of the association, but they're charging exit fees for your seller to change the documents. I don't get it, but they're all doing it, and just prepare your clients ahead of time at the listing time or contract writing time.
Because when they moved in, there may not have
It
been
may
a
not have been.
transfer
they're all-
fee.
They're all doing it, guys. Everything's expensive. They don't have enough money, you know.
That's one of the line items on our expense worksheet for our clients. by the way.
So I will tell you, something like $175 at the closing table. If you didn't spend time explaining some of these things to your clients, can cause the biggest issues. And you would think it's $175. To them, it's a surprise. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people overreact for something under $200 on the closing statement. Okay, so be prepared, you think, oh, they'll be fine with that. That's like that $495. If you did not have the conversation that was being charged and it was just in the buyer's agreement, but you didn't talk about it. And then they go to closing and see that, they're gonna go, what's this? And you're gonna be sitting right there
Well,
and they're gonna look at you.
and it could be, as in the case, as I told you, they had to dig up the neighbor's yard, their yard, so instead of this being to the seller had to come on Monday.
Yeah.
To close.
Yeah.
Okay, now every dime counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, just be aware of that. Then, like I said, it all has to balance out. This column has to balance equally, same thing over here, not equally across this way,
Right,
but.
but for
as they
their,
Go up a bit. You have to all balance out.
so then it's gonna say due from buyer, and that's what they have to bring to the closing in certified funds.
Yep.
That's their amount
Or wire.
or wire.
And then same thing if you're sellers. You'll remember back if you have a trust. Please make sure they're aware the check will be cut to the trust. If they want the funds wired, especially to their Schwab account or whatever, which most of them do, if they have to have an account in the name of the trust. Cannot send it to just their personal account. If that's the way they have their whole title. So. The other thing that we didn't talk about, that comes up, it came up yesterday. Because they didn't have the same last names, I can't assume everybody's married or not married. They
Yes.
were married, they didn't have the same last names, but I had to explain to them joint tenancy. Or tenants in common. And on the Missouri side, there's a thing called tenants by the entirety. And the buyer has to make a selection at the closing table, how they wish to take title.
Hmm.
Okay, and so, make sure you explain that to them. I assume you all do know
No,
what that is.
they
No?
do- do
Okay,
not
well, I
assume.
shouldn't assume.
Because
Okay.
you're the wealth of knowledge, we want you to
Well,
share.
And someone who has, is a joint tenant means that if either of them passes away, that their interest in the property would automatically transfer to the other. Now, it doesn't, I don't wanna say automatically, I hate to use that word, because it doesn't on paper transfer, they'll have to have death certificates and things down the
Right.
road. Okay, but it does pass over to them as far as the courts are concerned. Okay, if they're joint tenants. In Missouri, there's an added benefit to that. It's called tenants by the entirety. It's only available in Missouri. And what it means is if either party has a judgment against them. So if you remember our policy there, there was $1 million judgment against Charlie Brown, okay? That judgment would not pass through to Lucy if he were to have passed away into with tenants by the entirety, unless that judgment's from a government agency. Those don't magically disappear. State, federal, local, those still stick around. Okay? Then tenants in common, there are tenants in common, however, in Kansas, as you most should know, you can't will away more than half of your interest in the estate, but you could say, no, I don't want my half to just go to my spouse. I want it to go to my kids from my former marriage. And you could be tenants in common instead of joint tenants. Things like that. Or if you're just three random people buying a house, then you want to be tenants in common, and you want to be able to will your interest of the property to somebody else, not your common tenants, you can do that. Or there could be no co-ownership that exists, if it's a corporation as an example, a lot of LLCs, fix and flippers, you might be dealing with them that are buying, there's no co-ownership because it's the LLC. Those are the types of ownerships that they'll want to close the thing.
What questions do you have about the Alta settlement statement?
Any,
Does this make it,
make it
give
easier?
you some understanding of what's on here and what to look for?
Yeah, like I said, guys, as Kristen said, you can do split closings. I recommend it if you like your company like us. And you always choose your vendor, whether it's title, home inspections, what have you, based on the service you know they're gonna provide and how it's gonna reflect on you to the client. Is the best recommendation I'll give you. I mean, I can, like I said earlier, because we're a locally owned and operated company, we have the ability and the flexibility to do things that others cannot sometimes. Had a KW agent refinancing her own home that had an issue pop up on the title for a lien that she was disputing the other title company because her lender had recommended she use it. Now, she recommends us to all of our clients, but her lender had said, no, we're gonna use this title company. They couldn't close the transaction. And we were able to get it taken care of and closed,
Wow.
so.
Tamisha.
I
Yes.
do have a rate card, however, I really don't like when people ask, because I'm trying to put premium, I'll be honest with you. I
Well,
want
but
you
for
to
now,
Use my app.
in these last minutes,
Yeah, all my fees, all my rates are all built into my app. And you can get to my app by texting the name Platinum to our phone number. It's on everything I hand out, business.
would you read the phone number off for those
Yeah,
people who are on Zoom? 913-491-5001.
50. And if you text our name, Platinum, to that phone number, it will send you the link to our online application. It's not an app you have to download. It's an application that runs on a secure website. And you can get to that website also through our website, which is platinumtitleksmo.com. Everything's on the notepad I just handed you. It's on everything I put out. And if you go to the website from your computer, you click on the red box that says seller net and buyer estimate and close, and it'll take you to the link. If you sign up for it, it will then allow you to do your buyer estimate of close or your seller net calculators right there. It creates a PDF, it saves them. You can save them by client name. It'll automatically save them by address. You can email them to your clients. You can put them in command because you have to have a seller net sheet when you
Yes, you
take a
do.
listing. You can upload the PDF into command, so you have, for compliance purposes, your seller net. But it has all my fees built in. You can even put in your own fees. So if you have, as we talked about, a transaction fee, you can put those in under what's called default cost. And then if you want to also put in your compensation rates, because it says compensation, you can do it by dollar amount or percentages. And so
Dollar amount.
every time you
Has to
do
be
your-
dollar amount.
a seller or a buyer net, it auto calculates all those fees. You can even put in your lender fees. So if you deal with a particular lender on a regular basis, you can put in his underwriting fees, his credit report fees, his appraisal fees. And so you can use the app to get business. As an example, you're gonna go on a listing appointment. If you go in and do your seller net ahead of time, you can go out on your listing appointment. And since mine is on a secure website, you could bring it up, you do it on your computer, you bring it up on your phone or your iPad in front of the seller. If you need to edit anything, you hit the little edit button, it automatically updates it. And you can either email a PDF to your client, or if you carry a little portable printer, you can print it out.
Sweet, sweet.
Again, and the same thing, you're gonna show properties. My broker always told me, never show more than 3 homes at a time. But if you're gonna do
Ideally.
that, go do the estimate of purchase for each one of those homes. So when you're showing the client, and they're going, oh, I'm not real sure, so hang on a second. You can bring up your estimate you've already done. You can show them what their payment is, how much money they're gonna need to close to buy that house. And if they go, well, I really don't wanna pay that much, okay, well, let's edit it. Change it, it updates it right down the spot.
How cool is that?
And last and certainly not least, it has a lead generation program to it. That if you will, after you sign up to use the app, if you'll click on lead capture, it will create custom seller calculators and custom buyer calculators just for you.
Awesome.
That you can push out to your clients, and if they'll use it, you can log in and see every calculator they've done. And what properties they're looking at, what they're
Okay.
thinking about selling their house for, all of it.
Thank you, Scott, really appreciate it. Thank you for everybody on Zoom, and jump off of here and then go to the office Facebook page and join us for the business meeting. Thanks.
What's that?
I use the skinning